So welcome back to Get Hired, or just plain welcome if this is the first session that you're joining us for. I'm Jen. In case you missed my introduction earlier, I'm the Manager of Career Development Services in the Academic Advising and Career Center. And it's my pleasure to introduce your next facilitators. So first, currently appearing on screen, I would like to introduce you to Wei Huang. Wei is a career counselor at the Academic Advising and Career Center. Wei is a career management practitioner with 15 and more years of experience. In the last 7 years, she's been working as a career educator and career counselor here at the University of Toronto. She assists students in building their self-directed career management skills and career stories through experiential learning programs and also one-on-one and group sessions. Wei has an interesting wandering career story as well. Wei's bachelor was in computer science. Yes, Wei is a computer scientist originally, but moved into career counseling through the work and career counseling program at George Brown College. Wei's also completed the Master of Education in Adult Education with a focus on work and career from UTSC. So if anyone has interest in careers in education or further education in that realm, we would be happy to talk with you. I would also like to introduce my colleague, Rebecca Burwell. Rebecca is also a career counselor here at the Academic Advising and Career Center. And likewise, she's got lots of experience, over 20 years, but I don't believe it, in the field of career development, primarily working in post-secondary career centers like the Academic Advising and Career Center. Rebecca has also earned the Master of Education from UTSC at the University of Toronto and a Bachelor of Applied Science from the University of Guelph, which if I'm not mistaken, like Wei, is also a very sciencey background. So we have two folks with us today who are existing on both science and social science sides of their education. Rebecca also studied career and work counseling at George Brown College. So it is my sincere pleasure to welcome both Wei and Rebecca. I'm kind of filibustering because I can see that there are still some people coming into the waiting room. But if you folks might like to maybe slowly get us into your presentation, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm Wei. So I'm very excited and happy to be online again for this year's Get Hired, the first session. I don't know how many of you have been to last year, but this year we definitely have an enhanced online conference. And for this session, me and my colleague Rebecca just gonna co-facilitate to guide you through this session. Again, just a note, you could finish this exercise beforehand. That would be most valuable to do it beforehand. But if not, if you just join us last minute, that's okay. We do have a backup plan. Basically, for people who didn't have a chance to do this, during the session, we'll have a short version to get you catch up. Okay, just some reminder. The closed caption is available. So basically you need to do is just to go to the menu bar where live transcript and then click show subtitle. And again here, thank you for our captioner, constantly working behind the scene to give us very accurate and precise captions. Thank you, Jennifer. And also, during the session, we're going to use a couple handouts. For those of you who had a chance to go through the agenda, it should be in the agenda. You can just click the link to get the e-version of this handout. Or I know some of you maybe already printed out. That's even better. So basically, one is a narrative know yourself. The other is Holland Code assessment. Again, this session, both me and Rebecca gonna be co-facilitating together. So when I'm doing the presentation, Rebecca gonna be check the chat box to answer some questions or some of the comments. We're gonna keep the chat box down. And also, again, from the conference agenda, you can find out the handout links. There are two parts for this 1.5 hour. In between, there will be 5 minutes break after part 1. So basically, we're gonna start with part 1, learning your career code after a brief check-in and introduction. And basically, we're gonna introduce the traditional assessment approach to help you learn about your career type. And then after break, we're gonna look at the other fundamental approach, which is more reflecting on your experience, sharing your stories to know yourself better. And this is what we hope to achieve. For those of you who've been to this morning, the keynote speaker, from her speech, actually you already heard this term linear or non-linear careers. The idea is most of people, they don't know their career goal from the first day. It takes a while, back and forth. In Eka, our keynote speaker's case, I heard a lot of trial and error to really get to where she is at. So definitely being aware of the non-career journal. And no matter what kind of journal you start, it's always start from knowing yourself. That's where our focus today. We're gonna introduce both assessment and narrative approach to help you know yourself better. Again, from Eka's presentation, you probably got some taste of this assessment narrative approach already. When she talked about the value exercise she did, that's actually kind of assessment. And when she shared about the career pivot stories and reflect on the transferable skills from the stories, that's basically a narrative approach. So for those of you who were there, you got one taste already, but in this session, we're gonna introduce the full concept of both approaches, and we're gonna have some interactive activity for both approaches and to help you explore your interests, strengths, and values, which is a fundamental for you to get to know yourself. And at the end of the session, we're gonna introduce some of the available career planning resources and tools for you to further explore as the next steps. Okay, I would like to start this poll just to know where you're at in terms of your career development or career planning. Let me launch the poll. So either you have a clear goal or some kind of clear. It's always fun to look at the constantly moving bar of the poll. Make me feel actually there's a huge group behind interacting with us. So far, a lot of people have some ideas of career goal. Okay. Let me show the result. So definitely, it seems a lot of you have some ideas of career goal, but still also a lot of you have some interest but no career goal. And what I really want to emphasize, it doesn't matter where you're at, it's all right places. Because from this session, hopefully either you will confirm some of the career interests and goal ideas, or you'll discover something new, and you will definitely get something out of the sessions. Okay, let me finish sharing. And there are always many different ways to help you develop your interests and career goals. And most of them are definitely not straight paths. And here's one career path, just make it fun. I would like you to guess who is this person. It's definitely not a straight career path. Just you can type your answer in the chat box. Oh, it's almost, I don't know how many of you have seen our PowerPoints beforehand. I believe most of you haven't seen, right? Just to really take a guess. And it seems there's some clues in terms of political science or connect to politician or Africa. It seems a lot of people got it right away. it's Obama. It's not surprising. And but I think the surprising part, sometimes when you look at this, it's basically not that linear. It's hard without knowing the answer, it's hard for you to connect college for 2 years and working in a community project to connect to Obama, the former US president. So it seems there's a misconnection at some point. But the idea is actually for him, when I read his story, he didn't set up his goal to get to the elective political career, to want to be a US president much later in his career. And even for returning to school for law degree, based on his goal, it's more for him to enhance his community housing project and to enhance his activism work in the community. He didn't even think about that at all. The idea is, I guess the message here is no matter how big or how small your career goals and interest, it always develops from your experience and also involving with new experience. And that's why today we would like to introduce you some tools and exercise to help you reflect on your experience, and also through that exercise and activity to identify your career interest, values, and strengths. Okay, so without further ado, I'm gonna turn it to my colleague Rebecca to guide you through the part 1. Rebecca.
Okay, thank you so much, Wei. So what I'm going to do is just give me a moment. I'm going to start sharing my screen so that I can control the slides okay. Okay, I think you can see the slides now. Yep, Wei's giving me the go ahead, so great, thanks very much. So I have the pleasure today of walking you through what are called the Holland Codes to help you determine your typology, to help you determine your 3 career codes. And what I'd like to ask you first, here's another quick poll. Have any of you taken an interest inventory before, or any kind of career assessment instrument? And some of you might have done the one that we suggested that you do over lunchtime in preparation for this. If you didn't do it, that's okay. You might have done that one. You might have done other ones in the past through career cruising. Okay, lots of hands going up. So lots of people have done them. So I will just see if I can launch this poll to see how helpful you found those. This is always interesting to see as a career counselor. Okay, so it looks like only 9% of people have found a career assessment interest to be accurate and helpful. 66% at least found it to be somewhat helpful, so that's good to hear. But a full 25% found it not too helpful or not helpful at all. And I can certainly understand that without really good interpretation of a career assessment, it can often leave you just kind of shrugging your shoulders and saying, I don't really know what I got out of that. Interest assessments try and be too specific and say, oh, you should be a this, this, or this. And that's really not too helpful at all. What we really want to discover, and what we're going to do here this afternoon, is help you understand your interest patterns. That is so much more helpful than just trying to get you to one specific occupational choice. So we're going to help you figure out what your vocational personality is. So learning this practical model will help you know yourself better and assist with finding a good career fit. The assessment sort of system we're looking at, the model I'm going to introduce in a minute, identifies 6 different vocational personalities. And probably everyone identifies with all 6 of them, at least to some small extent, but you'll identify certainly with some more than others. And what we want to find out by the end of this part 1 of this session is, what's your 3-letter code? So what 3 of these 6 vocational personalities do you most relate to? And when you have a sense of those, I'm going to give you a sense of what kinds of occupations or what types of career fields really suit those kinds of personalities. So that's what we're going to do for the next few minutes. You can follow along on your handout if you have it. If you don't have it handy, that's okay. But if you do have your handouts printed or on the screen with you, this is the one that you can be referring to as I speak. So these are up at the top column. Those are the 6 vocational personalities that we're going to be looking at. And I'm going to be adding in lots more notes on those. So you can kind of scroll those down if you like as I go through the slides. So what's on screen here is a hexagon, which is indicating what these 6 Holland codes are. So like I said, I'm going to give you a description, a good description, I hope, of each of these 6 types that are represented by each of the 6 points on the hexagon. So first we have, we'll look at the realistic type. They're also called the doers. Then we'll look at the investigative type, who are also called the thinkers. Then artistic, also known as the creators. Social type, which are also known as the helpers. Then enterprising, who are known as the persuaders. And lastly, the conventional type, who are also known as the organizers. And I will go through each one of these in detail with you so that, like I said, in a few minutes, you can understand what your top 3 groupings are and what that means for your career choices. So people who fall into the realistic grouping, or the
Rebecca, Rebecca, for a second.
it looks like I had a connection
back.
issue. Okay, sorry about that. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. I'm not sure what happened. I've had no problems with my internet today at all. So far, anyway. Okay, going back to sharing my slides. So I think I'm okay. So yeah, I'll start here again. So the first group we're looking at again are the realistic type, so also known as R. They're the doers. And these people tend to have mechanical and athletic abilities. They often like working outdoors, not always, but very often do. They like working with tools and objects, tend to prefer dealing with things rather than people. So overall, what I could say about people who fall into this type group is that they tend not to be people who like to sit around a lot. Sitting at a desk for a long time during the day would be really troublesome for them. They like to be moving. They like to be doing things with their hands, just really like to keep physically busy. So some ways that you would describe the realistic type, they tend to be reliable, practical, handy, well-coordinated. In terms of values, they like tangible results. So they like to see the results of their work. So say you're a carpenter, you can actually see the table that you just built. They value common sense and, again, working outdoors. The skills they tend to have would be working with tools, machines, tend to be very mechanically inclined. They handle emergencies really well. So you would see, say, an occupational grouping like paramedics falling into this because they handle emergencies well, or firefighters, etc. Other skills are repairing and building. So some common occupations that would be favored by this type who like to be the doers. So engineering, which often involves a lot of action and doing, especially let's say if you're an engineer who's on site. Architecture and construction. And within the health sciences, there are some particular occupations that would appeal particularly to people who fall into this type. People who would be working with equipment, machinery, who would be moving around a lot. So say someone who's an ultrasound technician, again, a paramedic or a dental hygienist. The agricultural career grouping fits in here as well too. So again, you're thinking of people who like to work outdoors, like to work with their hands, forest worker, farmer. In terms of technology, you might not think of that grouping falling into this, but again, people who would be actively doing, working with equipment, materials moving around, somebody who sets up computer networks, or a geospatial technologist, for example, would be up and moving around a lot. Of course, people in manufacturing, corrections and security, transportation. And then within hospitality, again, you think of somebody working with their hands, with equipment, tools, a chef, or an adventure guide, as well as somebody who, again, would be working outdoors. So lots of different kinds of occupations can fall into this grouping. So if you find yourself really, this grouping really appeals to you, you want to be thinking about, okay, how can I be working with equipment and tools, and how can I be moving during the day at my job? Somebody who this is their number one grouping is going to have a pretty hard time sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day. So moving on to group 2. If this is your main grouping, then you're somebody likely with math and science abilities. You enjoy solving complex problems, and you may tend to prefer dealing with ideas rather than people or things. So these are people who are naturally really quite intellectual. They're very curious. As kids, they wanted to know how things worked. When they were growing up, they might have been often asking the question, why, why this, why that, how does this work? They can be critical, and they're very introspective. So things naturally that they value would be knowledge, constant learning. They really like researching, tend to lean towards academic achievement. So you find a lot of this type of people within this group at post-secondary institutions. They enjoy abstract problem solving, and skills, obviously this is just a short list, but skills they would tend to have would be writing, researching, analyzing, problem solving, mathematical ability. So common occupations favored by this type would be within these types of areas. So science, and science of course is very broad. So I've just named a couple of occupations here, but there are so many that fall within the science grouping, and people who are the thinkers really do tend to gravitate towards science. Technology is another big area where you'll find the thinkers in roles like software developer, or something fairly new, a cybersecurity specialist. Also health science, of course. So being a doctor, being able to do that analysis, problem solving, same thing with chiropractor, naturopath. Engineering. So we saw engineering fall into the realistic grouping as well. So depending on what kind of engineering you're doing and what your specific role is, it could fall within either of those groupings. And mathematics falls here as well. So again, pretty broad category, but you could be a biostatistician, for example, or an actuary. So our third grouping of the 6 is artistic, or the creators. And people who are artistic tend to have really strong imagination, tend to be naturally very creative. They enjoy creating original work. They tend to prefer dealing with ideas rather than with things. So besides being creative, they're also expressive, idealistic, tend to be quite intuitive and often sensitive. They really value aesthetics, emotion, expressing individuality and change. And lots of different skills fall within the artistic grouping, and just a few of them would be verbal and linguistic skills, designing, creating, performing. They might have particular musical skills or within the fine arts, and writing falls in here as well. So again, lots of different kinds of occupations. These are just a handful. I would say that people who are creators, we really see them in all kinds of different areas within the workplace. People who are extremely creative, coming up with lots of ideas, they gravitate to these kinds of areas as well. But they might be actors, artists, graphic designer. It might be in communications, writing, journalism. Could also be, say, somebody, an industrial designer, like somebody who designs furniture, designs packaging. Like, think of all kinds of things. If you look around you, there's so many different things that have been creative, that have been thought of. And it's the artistic types that are doing this kind of work. So our fourth grouping are the helpers. So these are people who tend to have very natural helping social skills. They enjoy helping others solve problems, and tend to, during their day, during their work day, they want to be working with people, dealing with people, rather than, more so than with things. And so the way you would describe somebody within the social grouping, they're caring, cooperative, understanding, tend to be friendly and patient. They value helping other people, relationships, feelings, personal growth. Lots of different skills here too, but some of them would be, of course, verbal communication, listening to other people, teaching, training, counseling or mentoring people, and problem solving with people in general. And so we can think of lots of different occupations that work well for this group too. So some common ones would be, again, teaching and training. So it's not just school teacher, it could be training within an organization. There's lots of different roles within education broadly. Counseling and psychotherapy would fit here. We certainly have lots of students interested in that area. Healthcare occupations such as nursing. Now, nursing can fall into other groupings too. Certainly people who are interested in science, so who are investigative, might be drawn to nursing for the science aspect of it. Someone who's realistic and likes being on their feet and doing things could also be drawn to nursing. And somebody who's a helper, this social type, could also be drawn to nursing as well, because you're, a big part of your day is tending to others and caring for other people. Any kind of jobs within the broader field of social work would fall here. Human resources, sales and service too. So working in customer service or working retail would fall here as well. So lots of different occupations. So our fifth grouping would be people in the enterprising group, also called the Persuaders. They tend to be people with natural leadership and speaking abilities. They often enjoy being influential and being in leadership roles. They're often interested in politics and economics, though not exclusively. Certainly, I would say they're very interested in business in general. And they would tend to prefer working with people and ideas rather than with things. And so some ways you might describe people like this would be, they tend to be risk takers. So our guest speaker this morning talked a lot about taking risks and how important it is. And I think it's important for everybody, no matter which of these types you fall into. But I think you might naturally find that people who are enterprising type will take to risk taking more naturally. They really enjoy that as part of their work. They enjoy being assertive. They tend to be outgoing and optimistic. Sometimes they value status, influencing others, financial remuneration, and leadership. Skills, lots of different skills in this grouping, but just some of them would be public speaking, persuading, debating, and social interaction. So different occupations favored by this type. So government and public administration. So those political kinds of roles where they can have influence and make change. Also find them in lots of business types of occupations. And sorry, I just see here, I'm getting a message, my internet connection is unstable. So hopefully I am going to hang in here. You won't lose me again. So yeah, lots of different roles within business. So finance, marketing, sales, service, management, administration, also in law too. So lawyers would often be an enterprising type. And entrepreneurs very broadly would fit into this group as well. So last but not least are our conventional folks. They are known as the organizers. They tend to be people with clerical, or what I would call administrative, organizational types of abilities, as well as math, numerical abilities. They really enjoy organizing and solving logistical problems. They tend to prefer working with words and numbers rather than people or ideas. And I say tend to because it's a big generalization. So ways we might describe the conventional types, again, organized, they tend to be efficient, accurate, often very detail oriented. They're practical, go about things systematically. They value order, stability, precision, dependability. Just some of the skills that they have, apart from being detail oriented, they manage data well, often good at mathematics, doing different things with computer work, financial analysis, quality control. So anywhere where that organizational, logistical side is really required. So some occupations that you could consider if this is one of your main groupings would be accounting, something within administration. Again, that's broad. The area of logistics, financial analysis, business analysis, quality control would be just a few things that you could consider. So those, I think that gives you a strong idea of the 6 groupings. So what I'd like to do, if you have the handout in front of you, if you've just been making notes, think about what your code is. So so what I'm saying by your code is, what are your 3 top groupings, and place them in order, or at least what you're thinking right now. It doesn't have to be exact. But for example, you might think you're primarily social. So your first code is S, then you might be investigative, so I, and then maybe conventional, so C. So you can see there's all kinds of different combinations just based on how individual you are. And what I'm going to have you do is place a stamp on the hexagon where you feel you fit the best. So your number 1 code, I would like you to place a star on there. And how you do that is, you should see in your menu bar, you should have something that says annotate. And when you click on annotate, you can then click on the stamp. And yes, exactly. Somebody's got it there. And then you can click on a star. Yep. And then just place a star where you think you fall. Exactly. So lots of people, investigative, social for sure. Yep. Yeah, and I think this is very representative of the types of programs that we have at UTSC. Lots of people within the sciences. The social side as well. We've got lots of people studying mental health studies, psychology, and of course the business students. Business students would often have interests that fall within either conventional or enterprising. And a few people in realistic. I would say people who are the realistic grouping are probably underrepresented, perhaps at universities in general. So it's really important, if you are a realistic type, to be thinking about what's so important to you, what you really value, and how you can use your degree to be really doing, be doing that, hands-on kind of work. Okay, this is excellent. Thank you. So it looks like our biggest groupings are investigative and social. But yeah, I want to recognize all of the groupings and just again reiterate how important it is in terms of career fit that you're honoring what your greatest skills and values are. So if it is artistic, you want to make sure that you're honoring that in your work. If you can't honor it in your work, you might be able to do it in volunteer activities or extracurricular activities or hobbies. But ideally, your number one grouping, you want that to be represented in your day-to-day work. Okay, thanks very much, everyone. Appreciate all the annotations there. I'm just going to clear them off for now. Okay. Oh, now it looks like I'm annotating. Okay, I will now pass it back over to Wei to complete part 2 of our presentation and look at some other ways that you can assess your interest for career fit.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you. So let's take 5 minutes break, just a water break, and then we'll get on to part 2. I'm also sharing, there's a website from ONET website where you did your interest assessment earlier. From that website, you can input your top 3 codes, and then it will generate all the potential careers might be of interest to you. So for those who are curious, based on your top 3 type, based on this assessment approach, what kind of careers might be suggested to you, you can give it a try. And then after a break, we can have a little bit discussion in terms of whether you find it helpful or not. So let's get back. For those of you who had a chance to identify your top 3 and also get a better understanding of all of these 6 types, I'm curious, so what did you find? Did you find it the careers generated by your top 3 codes? Is it accurate or not somewhat accurate? Or is it helpful? You can type your answer in the chat box. I just want to get a sense in terms of compare with earlier when we asked the same question, your view about the assessment. Now that, thank you, Rebecca, explained the full concepts of all the 6 types. I wonder if it has changed or not. Somewhat accurate, right? Okay.
Yeah, it looks like most people found it
yeah.
Found it to be somewhat accurate. Yeah.
And that is a very common answer because it's not gonna be absolutely accurate because it's not the magic ball, right? It's not gonna just based on one assessment you can know what's your dream career because there's pros and cons based on this typology. Basically means we design assessment based on this most commonly used John Holland type to identify your career into different types and then generate the suitable careers. There's pros and cons. Rebecca, do you want to briefly talk about the pros and cons?
Sure. So yeah, one of the nice things about these kinds of assessments are that they're fairly simple to understand and easy to remember. They generate lots of good career ideas. Understand other people if you're in a group situation. So if you're in a job, then this gives you a framework to kind of understand where other people are coming from and what might really interest them and intrigue them and what they might be driven to. Some of the cons of models like this or assessments like this is that they can be taken as somewhat prescriptive. And so someone thinking, oh, I scored high in this grouping, so I absolutely have to do that. You know, I scored high in social, so I have to be in a helping occupation. And so there's something to be said for that, yes. But let's say that you're high in both social and investigative. They might be almost equal. And so if you're working in a role that's more investigative, that's okay. That can still be a really good fit for you. So we have to make sure that we don't take these assessment results as being, you know, boxing us in too much or pigeonholing us. Sometimes they're not inclusive enough. And what I would say about that is that, you know, we have the 6 groupings, and I think they do a pretty, you know, you can Google Holland Codes and find out more and more about them. But they can only describe so much. They can only go into so much detail. And so you might not find that every grouping would, you know, would fit you perfectly. They're also not necessarily reflective of individuality at times. So those are some of the cons of using these kinds of assessments, whether it's the ONET one that we asked you to do as part of this, or the career cruising one lots of people would have done before. But there are pros to them as well too. And what I would suggest, which I really mentioned at the beginning, is to really consider the framework of the assessment you're looking at. And so the framework of what we just looked at is this Holland Code model. And I think it's really not too prescriptive when we just look at it and say, what in general do each of these types mean and where do you gravitate towards to? In suggesting occupations, I wasn't saying, oh, this is a perfect match. You know, you get an assessment that says this is a 96% match for you. Well, honestly, that assessment can't say that, but we can say, you know, we can say patterns, we can see interests. And in that way, I think that this model is really helpful.
Thank you, Rebecca. Definitely, there are some careers probably not even in the career list in assessment because it's not most up to date. 5 years ago, some of the careers did not exist. Right? So that's another thing. But definitely with this pros and cons, that's why we need alternative way to complement this traditional assessment approach to help you understand yourself. That's what we're gonna focus on the part 2, is how you can know yourself based on your unique experience and unique stories to really approach it through more holistically to really understand yourself. So with that, I'm just gonna share another career path. This time, I'm not gonna ask you to guess who is this person because it's myself. So I'm just gonna share my own career path, career story to give you some sense how experience can shape your or change your interest and shape your interest. As Jen introduced at the beginning, my bachelor degree actually is in computer science, but it was never my choice. I don't know how many of you can relate to that. It was my parents' choice, and because it's a high in demand career and easy to find a job, which is true. Right after 4 years of study, actually my parents found a job for me in the government as a computer programmer. Like up to that point, all of my past education or career path was basically prescribed by my parents. And I started that job. It's in everyone's eyes, it's very stable. It's not very demanding, right? So you just sit in front of a computer, sometimes design some small programs, but it's very boring to me. I'm a people-oriented person. I like interactions. The thing about computer, you cannot talk to it. if there's an error, you cannot communicate to fix the error. You have to really go in depth, like debugging, coding. Some of you learn computer may be related to that. A small error in the code can cost like 2 days to debugging, right? So I almost hate that job, but I cannot change the job because again, I cannot really say no to my parents. They spend a lot of effort to put me in a good position. In everyone's eye, it's a great career in the government. So what I did is I made a small move. That's a quote, when you cannot change the music, you change your move, right? So I made a small move, meaning I found a job in the evening where I used my strength in English. I was never major in English, but English was always my strength in communication. So I cold called evening English school to introduce myself as potential teacher to teaching adults English. And I got a job, luckily, I guess because of this self-marketing and show the confidence. That is almost a pivoting experience for me to really understand myself. I love teaching adults because it's a mutual benefit. It's like you can learn from each other. It's not only one-way teaching, right? And that's planted some seeds about adult teaching, adult education. And then I still had to stay in that job, but I got saw another propaganda about immigration to Canada. And I basically just follow to go through the whole process to make this big change, because the solution has to be out of box, then let's just find it out of the country. So it's almost like an escape. I immigrated here as a computer programmer and was trying to find a job in the computer science. Of course, was my profession. I need to survive. But in the job search workshop, something like this, in the community center, I got inspired by the job search facilitator. This could be that facilitator. I was sitting in a workshop as a job seeker. I really found the job as a career counselor really fascinating because you can facilitate people's career potential and help them learn about themselves, which they knew already. It just needs some of discovery, right? That's totally resonate with my adult education interest. And that's where I decided to change my career, went back to school. The rest of the story is pretty straightforward. Went back to school and get the career and counseling diploma and then work in a community as a career counselor, and then went back to school, get a master's degree, and then got into UFT in the career center 7 years ago. So this is definitely a non-linear one. And what I really want to share is this whole idea. I never planned to be a career counselor. I didn't even know this job until that job search workshop I was in. So it's totally happened by chance. For here, I would like to introduce you this quote from John Krampus. Again, to make it a bit fun, anyone can guess what's the first word based on this whole quote? I should read this quote just to make sure everyone on the same page. Something is a product of countless numbers of learning experience made available by both planned and unplanned situations in which individuals find themselves. The learning outcome including skills, interest, knowledge, beliefs, and preference, and future actions. So this is the planned happenstance theory. Any guess? What's the missing word here? Career. It's definitely could be the right answer. And actually, in a way, doesn't matter what you choose. Answer here is, oops, too quick. It's human behavior. So anything, success, failure, growth, career are all right answer because basically human behavior we learn from our experience. And that's the whole fundamental theory behind this. Reflecting on your experience, you can learn more about yourself. In my case, the planned situation could be I planned to find an evening job as an English teacher, and I really discovered my interest in adult education. And the unplanned situation is more like I sitting in the job search workshop, trying to find a computer job, and then totally get inspired by the person who is facilitating the workshop. So if you reflect on both planned and unplanned, really think about your story, you can always get something about yourself. Either it's about your interest, or why it matters to you, why you enjoy that so much, or it's about your strengths. You notice you are more maybe people-oriented, you enjoy talking in front of people or individual help. And then with that reflection and coupled with multiple stories, and that's what we call a narrative approach. You need to reflect ongoingly different stories to identify the theme. The idea is through multiple stories, there's always this theme about who you are. You as yourself with certain skills, strengths, interests, and values. And those are the themes you want to identify through your past to present stories. And with that theme, hopefully to develop your future story. So this is the approach you were going to use, what we call a narrative approach. And I'm going to introduce you to, in this short time, I'm going to introduce you to 3 different ways to help you understand your past, present, and future stories. We're going to talk about, introduce these 3 exercises. Later, going to be in a breakout room. You can choose your preference, which breakout room, which exercise you want to go to. So basically, storytelling is allow you to reflect on your past stories, something meaningful, or something could be rewarding story, could be a peak story. You overcome some challenges, right? Because within every meaningful story, there's some elements about who you are, can always show. And then mind map is more about reflecting on presently in your mind, what matters to you, what you think about, what kind of problems you think about you want to solve. And with that kind of values in your mind, what matters now, we can use mind map to help you brainstorm some other ideas. And then another one, art-based activity, is more pointing to the future, using some art-based visual board to help you visualize your future career. I'm going to briefly explain to you how this works in the breakout room as exercise before I send you to the breakout room. So again, for storytelling, what we're going to do in the breakout room is we're going to ask volunteer. First, I'll give you some individual time to reflect on, pick one story you want to reflect on. And then we're going to ask volunteer to share the story. And then the rest of the group really going to be an active listener, trying to identify what's involved in the storyteller in terms of what kind of activities they enjoy, and then what kind of working environment did they like, what kind of strengths did they use. And even you can ask them questions or self-reflecting why you are so proud of, which get into the values. So we're going to go through this exercise using the handout. We, as I mentioned earlier, narrative handout. And then end of the exercise, we're going to do some group brainstorming to really brainstorming what's involved in the story, strengths, values, and interest. And it's very powerful to do this in your group, because only when you're sharing with others, your theme of the story will become more clear and evident. And then we're going to do some reflection, compare with the Holland Code. Is it consistent? Is it something new? And then the second breakout room, we're more taking approach to really reflect on what important problems you would like to solve. Here, I think most of you have, when you were a child, you were being asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? For a child, it's a very easy question. I think most of us, when we were a child, we can just either say, I want to be a teacher. Actually, it's very common. When you're a child, you want to be a teacher, because teacher is your only exposure to career. Like both my little girls, they want to be a teacher in the future so far. But it's not that meaningful. With your more experience, more exposures, your career knowledge change, your career interest change. So instead of asking, what do I want to be? It sounds like there's one magic answer. We encourage you to think about what do you want to grow into with your experience. And it's for adult. If you ask, what do you want to be? It's almost like a philosophical question. That's why there's a nonprofit organization was developed by a group of graduates from philosophy programs. They developed this 80,000 hours as a nonprofit organization. It's an online one. You can definitely check it afterwards. Their hope is to, through this website, they really get people thinking about what makes their careers meaningful. And based on their tons of research, one of the most important factors to make it meaningful is, end of the day, everyone of us wants to do something good, wants to make some positive contribution to the society, to solve some of the problems, make a difference. And then they, again, based on their tons of research, they really come up with tons of problems. What's the urgent, pressing problems nowadays happening in the world? You can check their problem profiles, you can listen to the podcast. They really tackle all different kinds of areas to give you ideas. What kind of problems do you want to contribute to make your career meaningful, including equity, environmental issues, or biotech, outer space problems, big data, privacy problems, or positive thinking, you name it. Even pandemic, their most recent one, they have a podcast where they talk about how to reduce pandemic, right? So it's a great website if you really resonate with this approach. Instead of thinking about what do I want to be, think about, in this exercise, I will encourage you to think about what I want to focus on in terms of what kind of change do you want to make through your future work. For example, you can even just be generally saying, I want to improve people's health. And from there, in the breakout room, we're gonna again leverage the group power to use this mural to do this fun exercise mind map. Everyone gonna help each other brainstorming based on your key problems you want to solve. And then it will lead to some of the career ideas in the end. This is just an example. For example, again, you want to improve health. And then what are the different ways to improve health? And then just a free association. If you think about exercise, you will right away think about warm up, toning strengths, right? And then biking. So using this really mind map to help you free associated with some ideas, to get ideas from each other. When you look at the end, it actually pointing out different kinds of potential careers you can do to directly or indirectly solving this problem. So when you are in the breakout room, we'll have facilitator to guide you this process through Mura. The last breakout room, I'm gonna use the art-based activity, like I mentioned. Basically, you're gonna, I think most of you probably have exposure to collage, using a collage to develop a story. In this case, we're gonna use a digital collage. Basically, you have free access to a lot of pictures, fonts, words, images you can use to put together your vision board digitally. And then we'll encourage you to visualize it, ask some sort of questions, specific question to help you visualize what kind of career in the future. You don't have to know the job title, but the idea is through this visualization, you may get inspired, again, in a group setting. Maybe people get inspired by each other's vision board. So this is the third one. Any question at this point before I send you to the breakout room? 20 minutes. So here, as I showed this, the screenshot, you can choose one of breakout room based on your preference. The first one is story sharing, know yourself through stories. The second one is mind map, explore career possibilities. The third one is dream career vision board. Based on your preference, you choose to join which one. We're gonna have about 20 minutes. We'll have a facilitator to guide you through in each breakout room. Or you use it, the artistic space based on your preference. It's always always beneficial to try different ways to really learn about yourself. And that's what we talk about, this whole planned happenstance. I'm just gonna recap this planned happenstance as one of the key message I want you to take away. So through this visual presentation, the planned happenstance always start from open-minded, be curious, right? Even you don't know what are your interests, what are some career goals. If you are open-minded, be curious, and take any planned or unplanned experience. And the most important thing is after experience, do some intentional reflection, like what we did briefly today. You can do the reflections through storytelling, pair up with some others. And in our breakout room, we actually find the most valuable of storytelling is to share with others, because others can always tell some other aspects of who you are you're not even aware of, right? So always do storytelling, share with others, or you can just reflect on what are the urgent problems, most important problems you want to contribute, and then do some brainstorming. Hopefully people in in the mind map breakout room also got some ideas, a taste of how this can lead to different clues to help you identify the career possibilities. Or you can even, if you are more art-based, you can even use different art activity to do this career exploration. Actually, that reminds me, in late May, we're gonna have another round of Dream Job Academy, our signature art-based career exploration program. We're gonna run it in May. It will be, if you pursue this short exercise, art-based activity, if you find yourself really got into it, still the time is too short, you want to get a full in-depth understanding or exploration through art-based activity, I will encourage you, stay tuned, look at our May calendar. We will have the whole full version of Dream Job Academy. Weekly art-based career exploration sessions. So reflection can happen in many different ways. The idea is to follow the clue about your interests, strengths, and values through all these different kinds of approach. Even it's from assessment. Sometimes it also can be reinforcement. And then follow the clues to design your next job. You don't have to know your 5-year or 10-year career goal, but with the current clue, you can have some idea what could be the next step, what could be the next job. And then always take an experimental approach, like when you design something, design your life. This actually is based on design thinking. You can try it out, exploration, like our keynote speaker earlier mentioned, it takes her a while to have a trial and error to really find out what she is really good at and enjoying. And then this can be going several times. Sometimes it takes a while back and forth for you to find the career or careers. You can still change it. So last but not least, like I mentioned, we have a lot of good resources to help you to go from here to explore further. So for those of you who are interested in some assessment approach, you can start with career cruising. Maybe some of you are familiar from your high school short exercise, but now I'm sure you are more ready to take it in a full view. You can access career cruising from CLNX resources. And then from there, you can start from an informal assessment. It will generate some ideas for you. It is also a great comprehensive resource for you to look at all the different career profiles based on your interest, including each career in terms of working condition, educational career paths, and they interview real people to share about their insights about different careers. So it's a great resource. And from our website, our AAC's website, we also have recently in the last year developed this program pathway. The idea is based on your program, there is a way for you to get most out of it by engaging in both curricular and co-curricular activities. We actually lay out 4 years each year, what kind of career activities you can get involved in. And also by combining some of our earlier tip sheets, it also include what are some of example jobs people get into when they graduate from this program, and what are some of the typical further education options. So it's a great starting point if you're curious, what can you do with your program? 10 Sounds Coffee is basically an online social platform. We encourage you to talk to people in different professions, which you are curious about. And this is a platform you can connect with professionals in different occupation. They are volunteer to share their coffee time. That's why it's called 10 Sounds Coffee, to share their career stories, right? You can sign up through UFT Hub to connect with more UFT alumni. And the other way, other than the online resources, the other way to really to know yourself better, like I said from the beginning, is really get involved, getting more new experience. Any new experience can either confirm or discover some of the new interest. So from getting experience from a CLN, you can check the CCR, how you can get involved in co-curricular opportunities to search different opportunities of your interest. You can explore experiential learning. What are the different experiential learning programs available, including our job shadowing program? And you can also just check the job boards, get involved in the summer job, part-time, volunteer experience. Any experience will help you to get more further exploration to confirm your tentative ideas or discover some new ideas. So at the end, I would like you just to do another poll. This is our last poll. I just want to see where you're at after our 1.5 short time together. introduce you with 2 fundamental approach to know yourself. Compare with the beginning. What has changed? Let me load the part. Okay, the polling. Anyone just can take a feel where you are at. So we see moving. A lot of 64% have more tools and resources for career exploration. That's definitely what we want you to take away. Today's just a taste of the water and discover something new about myself, even through this short session. That's really great. And confirm, a lot of you, I remember at the beginning, you already have some tentative ideas, both interest and career goals. It's great if you find confirmation or something new. Either way, it's a process. I'm just going to end the polling and share the results. This is what we got. See, we actually moved from the majority from the tentative ideas. We moved to you know more about the tools, and you find some confirmation and discover something new. All good. I will explore some new career possibilities, which is the next step. And that's what we want you to take away, just to get involved in the next step.